Welcome back, true believers and spectacular Spidey fans, to another incredible episode of Spider-Man PS4 101, and boy do we have lots of news to discuss today. So in case you somehow missed all this incredible news, Insomniac Games, along with a bunch of other media outlets like Eurogamer, IGN, Game Informer, and more, showcased a bunch of new gameplay footage and information regarding Spider-Man PS4. And given everything that was shown off so far, like the Kingpin boss fight, new gameplay mechanics, and some brand new story cutscenes as well, I can guarantee you that this is going to be the greatest Spider-Man game ever made. And given all the greatness that was shown off earlier today, I have even further confidence in Insomniac Games that this will be a once-in-a-lifetime Spider-Man experience. And in order to show off this greatness even more, we are going to go over all the new pieces of information that were revealed today for Spider-Man PS4. So basically, all the information that I'm about to provide to you right now comes from the one and only Andrew Reiner himself from Game Informer, who did an incredible preview story of everything new for Spider-Man PS4. And in case you haven't read it yourself, I will indeed leave a link to it in the description below, but for this video, I'm going to point out all the brand new details that Andrew wrote about in this preview story. And just when I thought my excitement for this game couldn't go any higher, I was absolutely mistaken after reading this incredible preview. And the first thing that caught my eye right off the bat is the incredible new details that we have about Peter Parker in the game. And starting off with a very interesting new story point relating to Peter's character is that Peter actually has a mentor in this game that will help guide him to becoming a young adult. Even though Peter has been Spider-Man for 8 years in this game's story, who is very experienced at being the crime fighter that New York needs, it's very cool to see that Peter as a person is still struggling to balance his two lives together. And seeing how Peter himself will indeed have a mentor to help guide him during some parts of the story, I'm really curious to see how that narrative point is going to play out during the main game. And following that up with another character that relates to Peter's life is Mary Jane Watson. Now, what we know about MJ already is that she does know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and she is a journalist for the Daily Bugle. But relating to all these new nitty-gritty details, we now know that MJ is actually frustrated with Peter being Spider-Man. We knew back in April during Game Informer's coverage that MJ and Peter have been separated for 6 months. But given all this new information, we now know that MJ is going to play a very crucial role in regards to having the duality of Peter Parker and Spider-Man tie in with one another and having him choose between each life. Even though MJ will help out Peter as Spider-Man during certain parts of the game, she would definitely prefer it if Peter was not Spider-Man in order for him to live a normal life. But seeing how Peter will do whatever he can as Spider-Man in order to protect the ones that he cares about, that is actually what led MJ and Peter to split up from time to time and have not spoken for 6 months. And just hearing how compelling Peter and MJ's relationship sounds like with one another, I just can't wait to see the complexity between their acting on screen between Yuri Lowenthal and Laura Bailey's voice acting. Now, moving on from all the story points relating to Peter and MJ, we are going into the gameplay aspects of both their characters. So given all this new information, we now know that Peter does not work at Oscorp Industries, but rather a smaller science lab where he can focus on the projects that he's very passionate about. And not only is it cool seeing the scientific side of Peter Parker's big brain be shown off in this story, but we will also be able to work as Peter in the science lab through the active mini-games. Now, if you recall back from the Insomniac live stream that was held after E3, we did see a short little bit of a research station that had Peter mix and match certain bars for him to complete it. And even though that's not the type of minigame that will be in the Peter Parker gameplay, a lot of them will be very similar to that one and actually be quite challenging. Plus, if you're actually able to complete these tasks, you will gain research tokens for you to get new suits and get certain upgrades for Spider-Man to use in the game. And just seeing how much detail Insomniac is putting within the Peter Parker gameplay of the game just makes me so excited to try it out for myself. And if learning about Peter's gameplay wasn't enough, we also have an in-depth analysis of what MJ's gameplay is going to be like. So just like Peter, MJ will also be solving lots of puzzles in the game's narrative in order for her to progress through her gameplay, and she'll also be able to use her camera to take certain shots of evidence in certain levels. And alongside of that, she'll also be having to sneak around lots of enemies in order for her to avoid detection. And seeing how vast the gameplay is going to be, from swinging around the city as Spider-Man, solving scientific puzzles as Peter, and sneaking around enemies and taking photos as MJ, I'm just so pleased with the amount of variety that the game has. And if all that was just a tease as to what their full gameplay is, I am going to be blown away when we see what the full game holds. Now, if learning about Peter and MJ's gameplay wasn't enough, I don't know if you're ready for what's next. So after Andrew provided his descriptions for both Peter and MJ's gameplay, he also provided descriptions for all the new gameplay mechanics that were not shown within the E3 demo and fully implemented within the main game. Now, some of these mechanics that Andrew described are either really small within the game or actually really mind-blowing and awesome. And starting off the list with a mechanic that I find very interesting is the passage of time within Marvel's Spider-Man. So after playing the new build of the game, Andrew described that you will not see Peter retreat to his apartment at night or be alerted of what day it is, but you will see the main characters wearing different clothing, and certain missions give way to day or night changes. The city is just as colorful at night, establishing a different type of warmth and intimacy with its yellow streetlights and vibrant neon signs. I didn't get a good look at the denizen night activity to see if their numbers are thinned or if they have different behaviors, but the city itself takes on a whole different identity when the sun goes down. And given how New York City is indeed the city that never sleeps, I'm very intrigued to see how the difference is between the daytime and nighttime gameplay for New York when Spider-Man is swinging around. There is a high possibility that there will indeed be more crime that happens during the nighttime, but I'm really curious to see what else could happen during that time as well. And speaking of what else happens while you're exploring the city are actually side missions. Now, we have seen main story missions, research stations, and little petty crimes happen during the E3 demo, but not a full-on side mission like what Andrew describes here. So given Andrew's article, he says critical path story missions appear as yellow icons in the world. You'll also come across blue ones that represent side missions. I played through one of them that, well, was odd. I won't go into exactly what happens in this lengthy diversion, but can safely say that a woman named Stephanie is obsessed with something in the park. She required Spider-Man's assistance, but things quickly go south and all hell breaks loose. Again, the little details are everywhere. This side mission was fully fleshed out with story, spoken dialogue, and cutscenes. And once again, seeing how much detail Insomniac are putting within the side missions of the game, I am so excited to see what other types of missions that you can do within the full game. Now, moving right along to an aspect that occurs within every single third-person action game is, of course, the level up system. And even though some Spider-Man games in the past, like Web of Shadows, Spider-Man 2, or even Shattered Dimensions have had good level up and upgrade systems, this one seems extremely thought out. So Andrew describes the leveling up system by saying almost everything Spider-Man does in the game nets the player experience points. When enough XP is earned, a message will appear on screen alerting you that a new level has been reached. This milestone rewards you with a skill point that can be used to gain a new power. Each level also rewards you with set bonuses. When I reached level 3, my melee damage increased 10%. At level 5, I earned a 10% health boost. Some powers, suits, and gadgets cannot be unlocked unless the player reaches specific levels. For instance, to improve the impact web gadget, you'll need to reach level 10 to up the knockback range, level 15 for the maximum number of shots, level 20 to increase the knockback range again, and level 25 to add a cascade effect. Cascade spreads webbing to enemies if they collide with one another. Out of all of the level-based unlocks, level 50 was the highest requirement, but we'll have to wait and see if that's the cap. So seeing how many layers this level up system seems to have, and seeing how powerful Spider-Man will most likely be once we fully upgrade him, I am very excited to see what the plethora of upgrades will be in the final game. But of course, no level up or upgrade system is fully complete without an awesome skill tree, and the way on how Andrew describes this makes me very excited. So when skill points are earned, the player can exchange them for abilities that fall into 3 categories: Innovator, Defender, and Web Slinger. The latter deals with web swinging and city traversal. Defender is exactly what you would expect, and Innovator is mostly focused on improvisational stuff like throwing items. The introductory powers in each category require 1 skill point, but you'll eventually run into others that require more, along with specific player levels that must be reached before they can be activated. Most of the skills add nuance to web swinging and combat. They range from a pistol yank to extending the range of the perch takedown. So once again, this is classic stuff that we've seen in previous Spider-Man games, but the way on how Insomniac is handling it here makes me very, very excited. Knowing that there will be 3 different categories of upgrades for Spider-Man to equip for himself makes me very excited to see what the plethora of the upgrades will end up being. And for me personally, I really hope that there are some upgrades for the parkour in the game as well. Although one upgrade that is now officially confirmed from this coverage that was teased from Brian Intar a couple weeks ago is actually the charge jump in the game. And the way on how Andrew describes this just makes me super pumped. So Andrew goes on to saying, we were originally told a charge jump wouldn't be in the game, but it appears Insomniac's stance on this power has changed over the course of development and perhaps from so many of you requesting it. You won't be able to use charge jump right away, however, and will first have to unlock it within the web slinger skill path. I didn't get to test it out in my playthrough, but I did see a video of it. All skills have teaser videos. In this clip, Spider-Man ducks down for a second and then launches himself high into the air. If I had to guess, I'd say his vertical is about 25 feet. To perform the charge jump, you simply need to press R2 and X simultaneously. So seeing how the charge jump mechanic is in fact going to be an upgrade for Spider-Man to purchase for himself in the game just makes me so happy. Knowing that Spider-Man already has a sprint mechanic, and now that they're adding a charge jump in the mix as well, is going to make the traversal that much more fun. And it's going to give the player more variety when trying to swing stylishly around the city. And speaking of style, we're getting into my most favorite part about this article is the freaking air tricks that you see Spider-Man doing in this new coverage. So Andrew talked about these air tricks by saying, want to add a little flair to your web swinging? The air trick skill allows the player to perform mid-air roll maneuvers by simultaneously holding the triangle and circle buttons. I tested out this skill over the course of most of my playthrough and found it to be a great addition to long-distance traversal. As soon as I let go of the web line, I tap triangle and circle together to make Spider-Man curl up into a ball and flip through the air. Each trick nets him bonus XP and extra focus. I don't know if there are ways to initiate different tricks or if they are just randomly cycled, but you can see a moonsault in the GIF above. No matter how complex this system ends up being, getting more XP from this fun little activity could be a great way of helping achieve levels faster. The XP reward isn't much, but it will add up over time. Here are some of the other tricks, like the spider roll, flying helix, dragon roll, and the trick switch. And you guys have no idea how happy I was when I first saw the air tricks in the game. In the majority of previous Spider-Man games, there were air tricks, but the main thing is that Spider-Man would do them automatically. That's not to say that that was a bad thing, but it would have been more fun if we were able to control the moves that Spider-Man was doing in the game. Believe it or not, the last time that we actually got manually controllable air tricks is in Spider-Man 3, the movie game, and seeing how they're finally back just makes me so happy. And seeing how Insomniac clearly listened to the fans and actually incorporated manual air tricks for them to use when swinging around as Spider-Man just makes me so excited. And even though that list of tricks does sound awesome, like the spider roll and the flying helix, I still hope that there are a lot of different air tricks for Spider-Man to use in the swinging. Still, I'm just so hyped to try out the tricks for myself. Now, moving on to a more character-centric detail is Peter Parker's apartment. So as we know already, you won't be able to enter Peter's apartment whenever you want, but it does show up on the map and is featured in the opening cinematic and likely cutscenes over the course of the game. And relating to the placement of this building, his apartment is located on the eastern side of Chinatown. So I do think it is a bit disappointing that we cannot enter Peter Parker's apartment whenever we feel like, but it is cool to know exactly where Peter lives in New York City. And for me personally, I just hope that we get some really cool scenes of Peter in the apartment. Now, if all these gameplay details didn't manage to get your excitement levels up, hopefully the list of new suits that are confirmed for the game will. So during the new Spider-Man PS4 coverage where people got to play the game, they were actually able to play in different suits in the game as well. And besides the suits that we already know about, like Spider-Punk, Iron Spider, and the Velocity suit, we actually now have confirmation of 5 new suits that Spider-Man will have in the game. Now, not a lot is known about what the suit powers of these 2 new suits are, but the first 2 on the list are actually the MCU Spider-Man suit and Spider-Man 2099. It was pretty much a given that we were going to get the MCU Spider-Man suit since we already have the Iron Spider suit and the homemade suit in the game, but it's really nice to know that 2099 will be in the game as well. And for those of you who out there who love those suits, I think you'll be very pleased that they're going to be in the game. Now, relating to the suits that we do know about what their powers are for the original Scarlet Spider suit, the Bulletproof Spider-Man suit, and the Secret Wars Spider-Man suit. Now, I'm very excited about this one, is that the classic OG Scarlet Spider suit is in fact going to be in Spider-Man PS4, and its suit power is something that sounds awesome. Now, relating to one of the crazier suit powers that we know about, obviously relates to Spider-Punk, where he can pull out his guitar to send a sound wave to attack different enemies around him. But relating to Scarlet Spider, he can actually send out holograms that can distract enemies when fighting them. And if these are just some of the examples of the crazy suit powers that are in the game, I am going to be blown away with the other ones that are going to be featured as well. Now, like I said earlier, one of the other suits that was revealed is the Bulletproof Spider-Man suit, or more specifically, Spider Armor Mark II. And as you might have guessed, the suit power for this suit is that Spider-Man will take no damage when he has the suit on from bullets. This ranges from people with pistols, assault rifles, or even sniper rifles. And seeing how cool this suit looks, it's just going to be even more OP when you will not take any damage from bullets, which is going to be awesome. And relating to the last suit that was recently confirmed is the Secret Wars Spider-Man suit. Now, for me personally, I always thought this suit was kind of average, but I still will give it a try when I do unlock it in the game. And relating to its suit power, the Secret Wars Spider-Man will actually be able to discharge an EMP that will stun and disable weapons from enemies. And knowing that these are just some of the few new suits that people got to take a look at, I am going to lose my mind when we see all the suits that are going to be in the full game. And speaking of suits, we actually have the modifications that you can apply to all of them. Now, like we know already, Brian Intar has stated that we will be able to add modifiers to suits in order to upgrade Spider-Man even further. But in this preview story, Andrew fully goes into detail about what they do. So Andrew says you can have 3 suit mods active on most suits. These range from things like ballistic inserts, which reduce incoming bullet damage, to life support, which is an enhancement that automatically consumes some of the focus bar to heal you when you are on the verge of death. And seeing how powerful Spider-Man already seems to be with the upgrades that he can purchase for himself, the modifiers are going to be even more crazy to use on Spider-Man. And if the suit mods weren't already awesome enough, we now have confirmation of 2 brand new gadgets that we haven't seen or heard before, and they are really strange but really awesome at the same time. Now, the first gadget is going to be a concussive blast, where Spider-Man unleashes what appears to be a sound wave that knocks enemies back just like a force push. You can unlock this gadget at level 10 with 2 challenge and 3 crime tokens. Now, the second gadget is intriguingly enough called the Suspended Matrix. This wild piece of technology lifts enemies into the air and keeps them suspended for a few seconds seconds. It's a higher level edition requiring you to be level 25. It costs 2 base and 4 challenge tokens. And seeing how we already have the web shooters, the web tripwire, the web bomb, and the spider drone as the 4 gadgets that we know of already, these two sound crazy. I am very curious to see how these two are going to work during combat, but I'm even more intrigued to see how Peter will make these. Now, I'm not saying that this is bad, but the first gadget of the concussive blast definitely reminds me of the seismic blast from the Amazing Spider-Man 2 game. But the suspended matrix to me just sounds insane. But regardless, I am so excited to see these 2 gadgets in action when the full game releases. Now, moving on from the gadgets, we are of course going back to the main city of the game and how it works when trying to discover more of the map. So Andrew discusses about revealing the city by saying the map of New York City remains blanketed in a fog of war until Spider-Man activates surveillance towers scattered across building tops. Each tower reveals a portion of the map, much like the synchronization points in the Assassin's Creed games. When that area is exposed, Spider-Man can scan it to see the locations of side activities. The towers don't automatically activate. Spider-Man will need to sync his phone to them first, an act that is handled with a short minigame in which the player must rotate both analog sticks to match the phone's waveform with the towers. And seeing how Insomniac is actually encouraging the player to fully explore this version of New York City is actually going to make it that much more fun when swinging around town. Now, relating to things that you can do in the city is actually something called benchmarks. Every little thing you do in the game is tracked, and you can view it all in the benchmarks tab in your in-game menu. Achieving a benchmark nets you with more experience points. A couple of examples are web throwing 100 enemies to performing a 50-hit combo 30 times. And as you might have already guessed, we have seen what one of these benchmarks looks like, with Spider-Man collecting a certain trait for him to do in the city, either ranging from swinging, fighting, or etc. So if you're by any chance ever bored when swinging around the city, you can do these little side objectives in order for you to gain more experience. And speaking of what you can do in the city, we of course are moving on to the awesome collectible backpacks that are scattered throughout New York. Now, of course, we do know a lot about them already, but Andrew was kind enough to confirm how many there are in total in the full game. Spider-Man is a litter bug. He leaves backpacks all across the city. Each one contains an item from his past. You can view these items at any time within the in-game menu and can even rotate them. When you explore this inventory, Peter verbally shares some thoughts on each item. There are 55 backpacks to track down in the game. Intihar says that there's a reward for finding them all. And for me personally, while I was attending San Diego Comic-Con, I was able to collect all the backpacks in the demo, but I'm so excited to try and find all of them in the full game. And if collecting all the backpacks wasn't enough, there's actually going to be another reward when you find all of them. And in my opinion, I am so stoked to see what they're going to hold in the full game. And relating to another collectible, which is actually very intriguing, is for secret landmarks. So if you didn't know, the game does indeed have a mechanic where you can pull out your camera as Spider-Man and take certain pictures in the city. And when Andrew was playing the game, he actually discovered something really exciting when just taking pictures randomly. So Andrew says, I used the camera for a good 5 minutes to snap photos of people on the streets and the impressive skyline. I took a photo of a building that ended up being a secret landmark. I had no idea that secret landmarks were in the game. For the sake of spoilers, I won't reveal what this particular building was, but I will say if you see a structure that looks different, whip out the camera and take a shot. You can even do this while you're airborne. And seeing how vast the collectibles in this game are going to be, ranging from the backpacks, different tasks that you can do in the city, and secret landmarks, I am so excited to see what else the game is going to have. Now, as we're getting closer to the end of this list of new details for the game, we are going to be discussing about another aspect of J. Jonah Jameson's talk show, Just the Facts. So Andrew actually provided new details about the podcast by saying periodically throughout the game, Peter will queue up the newest episode of Just the Facts with J. Jonah Jameson. I heard a few during my playtime, including one in which Jameson has a rather heated yet amusing conversation with a plumber. My focus was diverted during the second episode and I didn't catch all of what was being discussed. Thankfully, these episodes can be replayed at any point. You'll find a tab in the menu that allows you to listen to any of Jameson's shows. And seeing how you can indeed listen to these podcasts whenever you feel like after they play for the first time makes me super relieved. I would feel exactly the same in Andrew's shoes if I were just swinging around the city and having fun. I would probably be distracted about everything that's going on to listen to JJ's podcast. But the fact that you can in fact pull it up in the main menu and listen to it again whenever you feel like is a huge plus. And ending it off with one of my favorite aspects about Spider-Man games is indeed the difficulty that comes along with them. So Andrew goes on to saying, from the outset of play, you are asked if you want to play the game on the friendly, amazing, or spectacular difficulty level. Despite the somewhat intimidating name, amazing is the default difficulty setting. Spectacular features stronger and more aggressive enemies. If you find one of these settings is a little too difficult or easy, you can switch it at any point during play. And knowing that Insomniac will give the player whichever difficulty they want to play at and also have them switch it whenever they feel like is a huge good sign. And given all the new details that were provided by this amazing preview story by Andrew Reiner, I have no words to describe how excited I am for this game. But anyways guys, that was all the incredible news that happened today for Spider-Man PS4 relating to all this new awesome coverage for the game, and I am so stoked that this game is so close to release. And seeing just how much of the game was shown down in one day just absolutely blows my mind. But regardless, let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. What was your favorite part about Andrew's preview story, and what new piece of footage was your most favorite to watch? For me, all the Peter Parker scenes that we've seen so far are absolutely mind-blowing to me, and I am so stoked to do all those air tricks in the game. But anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Stay spectacular, Spidey fans. Peace out.
Would you look at that? Half the crime tower's back up already.
When Spider Cop's on the job, come hell or high water, the job gets...
Nope.
She'd never admit it, but the chief was warming up to Spider Cop. His casual disregard for by-the-book thinking was a breath of fresh air. She'd come around someday.